Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 86 of the Weekly Yap, the Yes And podcast. I'm your host, Travis Thomas, the host of the Yap and the creator of Live Yes And. This is episode 86, and it's called Improve It with Erin Diehl. So Erin will be joining us here shortly. She and I sat down, and it's not often I get to talk to an improviser, and so I just had a lot of fun. She's a great interview. She's doing great stuff with Improve It in Chicago, and so she and I dive into that. Before we jump into the interview, want to say hello to everyone at the Crim Foundation in Flint, Michigan. I got to go give a workshop there last week, and one of the best groups of people that I've ever worked with, and I'm biased because they're in Flint, my hometown, and they're doing amazing work. And I grew up with the Crim Festival of Races, and now it's turned into a year-round fitness foundation. They're doing mindfulness and nutrition in schools. And for a city that could use a lot of help, they're doing amazing work. And so just want to say hello out there to the Crim Foundation. And finally, we're getting back to the Weekly Yap, where we're having some special guests on the show. I'm sure you guys are getting tired of the solo cast. And so today we get back at it, and then we've got a number of other interviews lined up for the next couple of months. So I'm really excited about that. And of course, if you are a listener of the Weekly Yap and you want to go to iTunes and give me a review or a rating, that's always great. You can go online at liveyesand.com if you want to see what else I'm up to as far as shows and talks and things like that. And I'm also always on social media at Live Yes And. So let's get into episode 86 with Erin Diehl. Erin, she and I actually found each other on social media, and again, being an improviser, and she's doing amazing corporate work with different organizations based out of Chicago, but she's doing work everywhere. And again, doing similar work that I'm passionate about, but obviously we all come at it at a different angle. And in this interview, we kind of talk about her background, how she got into improvisation. She's a Clemson Tiger, and we have some Michigan roots as well, but she gets into sort of her why she got into it, and just some of the interesting things that she has realized about herself and about the work that she's doing. So I really enjoyed this interview. I think you're going to enjoy it too. So please welcome Erin Diehl. And please welcome to the Weekly Yes And podcast, Erin Diehl. Erin, how are we doing today?
I am doing so well, Travis. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you. And this is, Erin, this is my first interview since probably May. So I've been doing a lot of solo casts over the summer just because it's been harder to schedule interviews. So you're my first one here in kind of in the new season. And so you should feel extremely honored.
I feel so honored. I will yes and your Yes And podcast and say thank you, and I'm excited to be here. That really does make me feel honored, so thank you.
Well, you know, it's not often that I have too many guests on the Weekly Yap that are actually improv people, and so when I came across you and your organization online, and I started looking into it, I was like, oh, okay, this is someone I need to talk to. And then you and I finally got a chance to talk and have a long conversation a little while ago, and I was like, all right, we need to have you on the Yap. And so for those of you who don't know, I know I kind of already gave an introduction, but Erin is the founder and CEO of Improve It Chicago. Applause for a cause. And so Erin, tell everyone what Improve It is all about.
Yes, thank you. Well, so we do similar work as Travis. We love spreading the gift of improvisational comedy to people and organizations. So first and foremost, we do professional development. So soft skill training on things like team building, effective communication, presentation skills, and we use the techniques of improv to help train. So first and foremost, a professional development company. We are really excited and passionate about getting into companies' culture, getting to know them, and helping them develop their soft skills through use of these, I like to say, I was going to say techniques, but almost technologies. I said technologies, but I meant techniques. And then the applause for the cause comes in. So improv really, in my mind, is all about supporting each other and it's really a give and a take. So when we say support, you have to give support in order to receive support. And so we do have an altruistic arm to us. So every year we have a charity partner that we donate a portion of our proceeds to. And this year it's called Bare Necessities, and it's a pediatric cancer foundation local here in Chicago. And they do what they call Bare Hugs. So any child going through pediatric cancer treatment, they offer them an experience. And so every quarter we are donating, and we are sponsoring 4 children. So we're giving to others, and with our soft skills, and then also we receive from that, but then we receive the good that comes from giving to others, and then we also give our donations as well. So that's Improve It in a very brief nutshell. I hope that was brief.
No, that's fantastic. No, and I love the altruistic side to it, because it's sort of you're getting a chance to sort of yes and your own sort of business model, right? It's
Exactly.
you're yes anding all the good that's going on, and you're being able to spread that love to others. And so, no, that's fantastic. And so, Erin, how did you sort of get into the improv world in the first place?
I love it. Well, I will tell you this, Travis, since I was born, my mother said I came out of her womb just like tap dancing, okay? And I was like, hello, world. So I've performed since I was 3, and I do want to credit my mother. Give it up to Janice Holbrook here.
Hey, Janice, yes.
Hey, Janice. She put me in community theater in Greenwood, South Carolina when I was 3 years old, and my mother is a singer, and she also does musical theater. And so she was Eliza Doolittle and My Fair Lady, and I was a street urchin at 3. And so from then I just kept performing. So I danced my whole life, went to Clemson University, danced there. Also through that time period, just performed in a variety of different things, sketch comedy, show choir. And then after I graduated college, sort of my whole life from like 13 on, I always said, I'm going to be a talk show host. And I really thought that. I literally believed it. I was like, nope. And my parents were of the mindset that, if anybody can do it, it's you, because you'll bug the crap out of somebody until you get it. So, and you can do it. So they never were like, no, you can't. And so I moved to Chicago right after and decided that I was going to start taking improv classes, just because my family at the time lived in Michigan. I went to high school in Michigan. And so Chicago was the next biggest city. And I thought, okay, I need some training under my belt other than this communications degree that I received from Clemson. And I also was like, oh, it's the land of Oprah. So I was like, move over, Oprah. There's a new lady in town. I had a lot of gumption, I will say, at 22. And then slowly but surely just started taking classes at Second City. And then I had an agent, and I started doing a lot of hosting and MC work for more like live events. And so I was traveling quite a bit. And actually for 5 years, I traveled months at a time doing a lot of MC work. So in the times that I was off from these gigs, I would come back and take a class, or I would do a sketch group, and we put up a show in a month. And then about 2010, I decided I needed to get off the road, and I got a full-time job at a recruiting firm doing business development. And then from there, I was like, I'm going to use this schedule, a 9 to 5, to go back and do what I really loved, which was comedy. And so then I just started taking all the classes and doing all the things. So I would work 9 to 5, and then I'd go to class at IO or at Second City or The Annoyance. And then I would perform with independent teams or teams from my with the groups that I was in class with. And it was kind of like working 2 full-time jobs, but I loved it. The moment I stepped into class, I will never forget it. And I think it was 2010. I just felt like I was at home. I felt, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I just felt like a calling of this art form is something that's so wonderful, and it brings people together in such a different way than anything I've ever done. So I was just so drawn to it. So long-winded answer, but that's how I got here.
No, I love it. I mean, obviously you've had performance in your background since, like you said, the time you came out of the womb. And so sort of being in the spotlight and being on stage was nothing new to you. And I love your aspirations of being the next Oprah.
Thank you.
It's funny, in college, I had a talk show, a college campus talk show, because I too was prepared to be the next Oprah.
Yes. We could have done a dual show, Travis.
We still can, Erin. We still can. Yes.
Oh, you're so right.
And so tell me, after having, this really an entire childhood and upbringing that was performance-based, you talked about in 2010 sort of going in and starting to take classes. What was it about those classes specifically that sort of just kind of opened things up for you?
That's a great question. For me, I've always felt so here's, I'm going to take a step back, I think, a few minutes here. Mm-hmm. So in high school, I've always been outgoing. I've never really been shy. I've always, I've always had that in me. But I think there's just one thing that sticks out in my mind so prevalently from high school, and it would be, I had friends, so I'm not saying I wasn't, people made fun of me or anything, but I will say this, I always look out for underdogs. I always want people to feel included. But at the time, I remember this one line some people would frequently say. They'd be like, "Who are you?" I don't know if you've ever heard that, like, "Who are you?" Like in that voice. And then that would come when I would say or do something kind of, different or funny or, in their minds weird. And so when I walked into class, I think in 2010, for the very first time, I just felt like I could be myself and I could do things. And if I said or did something, I wasn't looked at like a weirdo.
Yeah.
I was supported wholeheartedly. And that was when it clicked for me that, this art form brings people together. And I say art form because I really think it is an art form. It just brings people together in a way that you just have to accept what's being said. And you also, at the same time, want to support people for what they say and what they do. So it just, for me, it was just this theme of inclusivity that really resonated with me. And I just kept, and also to caveat that, I'll be honest with you. So as I told you, I performed scripted work my whole life. I learned choreographed dances my whole life. So when it came to improv, I was terrified. Like can I swear on this podcast? I was scared poopless. Okay.
I can bleep that out. The fact that you said poop. Yeah.
And so for me, it was also like, okay, I tried improv. I was actually in a show right when I graduated here in Chicago. It was an off-Broadway show called The Awesome 80s Prom, which is like a Tony and Tina's.
Yes.
And that was the first sort of true improv type. I mean, it was a kind of a loosely scripted show with some improv in it. I had a very strong character, so I made choices with that character. So it was improv, but it was also we had this character and you had some choices. But through that, I was like, man, improv is not easy, and I was a little scared of it back then because I was surrounded by a lot of great improvisers in that show. So also, what drew me to the classes in 2010 was like, I'm gonna conquer this fear. I'm gonna, I love this inclusivity feeling, but I'm also a little scared of it. So let me just run towards this thing that makes me afraid, and let me see if I can find, kind of get over it in a way. So yeah, that was it, really.
So where does that inspiration or mindset for you come from? This idea of running towards your fear.
So these are great questions, Travis.
I'm a good listener, Erin. I'm a good listener.
You really are. You should have it's weird. You should have a podcast.
I should. I'm thinking about it one of these days.
So fearlessness. It's a really great question. I think I grew up. I moved around a lot. I was always having to adapt to situations, so I never grew up in this. I moved in 3rd grade, 8th grade, And then, so I went to middle school, and I went to elementary school in South Carolina, middle school in Georgia, high school in Detroit, South Carolina for college. So all of those times I was completely starting over.
Yeah.
And I think through that, I really learned to adapt. And then also, I wish I could tell you a specific place and time I realized that I wanted to not be afraid of things. I think when I'm passionate, there's some things that I'm like, I'm afraid of that, and I don't care, right? Like snakes. Like,
right.
I'm afraid of snakes, and I don't care to touch a snake,
right?
Ever. That's fine. But for me, I sort of felt this calling, I guess, if you will. As you know, I said I wanted to be a talk show host, and I really felt like improv was this tool that could really help me. And there was this specific to following the fear in improv, I think it was just the idea that I had this team of people with me through this journey that made me sort of be like, okay, follow this fear. And I will say, I think intuition serves people in a lot of different ways. And for me, I feel like I've always had an intuition about certain things. And my intuition was like, you have got to do this. Like, I would literally, like, on the way to class, I would have like that achy stomach crampy feeling and like the armpit sweats. And I was in my head a lot as a beginning improviser, like so much. Right. I had one teacher even look at me and she's like, Erin, are you in your head right now? And I was like, yes, I am. Thank you for calling that out. But it was something that was just like, it just felt in my blood, like I had to do it. And also the people who were drawn to improv were also kind of like the reason for me to follow that fear. And I just think there's certain things in life that people, if they're like, I'm afraid of this, but I know it can make me better. I've always felt like following those fears only leads to success, and you're gonna fail so many. I mean, like, I stunk it up. Like, I cannot even tell you, my very first like real improv show was the worst show of my and guess what, our coach was there and he recorded it and he made us go back and watch it.
Torture
It was the worst. And so it was kind of like exposure therapy, if you will. Like, it was like, I just got to keep doing this. I don't know why. I just feel it. I need to do it. And I've tried that, like, and there's so many things I think, like, I kind of feel like at certain points, if I get bored, I need to try something. Like, we're doing a conference on Thursday, and we're adding in this choreographed dance. And my husband and I were talking about it last night, and he was like, well, it's a risk. You could either flip or flop on it. And he's like, but, you should do it, otherwise you'll be bored, kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
So I kind of think it just all falls in line together. That's a really great question, though. I hope that answered it in some way, shape, or form.
Well, no, I mean, it sounds like your childhood experience alone of any time, you're having to change locations or move somewhere and be the new kid in school, let alone once, or 4 times or however many times, that whether you like it or not at the time, that teaches you the ability to be adaptable, to be flexible, to survive outside of your comfort zone. And if you do that a couple of times, you start to build up a reserve of, all right, I've done this before, and I remember how nervous I was then, and I was okay. And I think improv really is that space of like, oh wow, I could really go up there and bomb, but if I do, like, I'll still be okay.
Exactly. Yeah. I love what you said too about the comfort zone, and I think it just kind of leaping forward here with Improve It, that's really something we talk about a lot, is really getting people comfortable with that uncomfortable. And having, we know that what we come in and do every single day is gonna shake up their day in a way that they typically wouldn't have if they hadn't brought us into their organization. And so really, for me too, going back to like this whole like mentality of overcoming fear, I think through just even all of those lessons you just mentioned of starting over so many times, I think I looked back at all of those experiences and I realized how much I grew from them. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. Like, the growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And that's really what I think it is. It's like when you kind of, you're like, oh wow, I did this because I, gave in to that fear, and you just kept doing it over and over. Like you just said, you start to realize, like, okay, something's going to happen. Something will come from this. I'm not sure what. Either way, it's a learning opportunity. And it's like, if we stay stuck and we don't try those new things that make us afraid, really, you're just stagnant. You're stagnating your own growth, and you're really just limiting yourself to the possibilities, because YOLO, life is short. and I think that's, it's hard to get in that mindset, though. I don't want to think, sit here and say that was easy for me to just do. Mm-hmm. I think this is repetition of choices, and we all have choices in life. So I think if anybody else is listening and they're like, oh well, that seems like it was easy, it definitely wasn't. It's definitely a sort of a mental thing that you have to be comfortable with, and like you said, just do a couple of times to realize that it's important to continue, I guess.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny how you mentioned earlier how your first improv show, how brutal it was, and for anyone listening, if you ever sit around a group of improvisers, you will never hear them talk about a good scene that they did. They will always ruminate and reminisce about those brutal scenes, and I could, my mental Rolodex could pull up plenty right now because those are the ones that stick out. But it's also, all you have to do is a semi-adequate scene, and you're hooked, right? You're hooked for the next show. It's like golf. You could go out there and play 18 horrible rounds, but if you have like 2 good shots, you're like, oh, I got to come back. And that's improv, yeah, because it's magic. Because when it happens, the right way, it feels magical, and the feeling is, I need to feel that again, and so it keeps you coming back for more.
Oh my God, yes. And to that point, I kind of look at improv as therapy, honestly, because you get to I remember, and I'm going to be real honest, in the past year, I have not performed as much as I would like to, because I'm totally focused on growing this business. And so it's been, the last time I probably did a show was I shouldn't say that. I perform every single week with workshops, but it's and we do some improv in those workshops, but the actual show,
right.
I haven't done in a while. So I will say, though, when you're absolutely right, when a scene hits or a show hits, it is like a therapeutic, cathartic experience, like a high that you can't get anywhere else. And then also, you're able to channel. Like, I remember when I was getting married, which is so funny. I met one of our director of talent here at Improve It, Christy, going through classes at IO, and I was getting married at the time, and I just remember her and I laughing because she had just got married, and she was like, it's so hilarious because like all of your scenes are about a bride or like getting married, or you get to kind of like cathartically, live out loud what your inner thoughts are thinking, and you can create characters from those inner thoughts, and that was just so helpful in my mind. I absolutely love it, and think, whether you go to therapy, which I'm a big fan of, or you go to an improv class, it's just so beneficial in so many ways.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely, yeah. I've referred to it as therapy many a times, and and it is, I think, like you talked about the feeling that you had taking those first classes. I mean, very similarly, I felt like, wow, like this is possible. And, because it's funny, it's such, I think the principles of improvisation are so natural and intuitive to us, yet at the same time, we have been so trained out of them that they feel so foreign when we experience them. Yet at the same time, I think what that joy is, it's reconnecting us back to kind of who we are and in the first place. And it's this, it's almost like connecting you back to childhood, or connecting you back to, wait, I am a natural collaborator. I don't need to compete over every aspect of my life. And that feeling you get when, you have a group of people who are truly collaborating with one another.
So agreed. Yeah. It's so funny. The whole time you were saying that, I was literally like following you, and my mind just went childhood. Like I just saw the word childhood so prominently as you were talking. And it's like, it connects you, I think, a lot with your inner child. And a lot of times, especially in business, we're afraid to let that side show or vulnerability show. So I just think in general, it's such a really great reminder that life, like play is important, and also being true and authentic to who you are is so important.
Yeah. So, Erin, when did you make the leap to even think that taking this into sort of the corporate world was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So in 2010, that's when I got off the road and I started working at this recruiting firm. I had the best boss in the whole world, by the way, and I still talk to her to this day. Super supportive. I mean, she yes-ands people in her day-to-day life. She's never even taken an improv class. So I started, really, like I said, just doing the 9 to 5 and then doing class after class and performing every night. And from there, I just was like, wow, everything I'm doing on stage and my classes and rehearsals, they are translating into my role at work, which was I was doing business development and consulting with different clients, trying to bring them into our firm and have them use our services. So I was becoming a better listener. I was thinking more quickly on my feet. I mean, this is true. Like, I'm not just rattling off these things. Like, I literally felt more present in conversations. It just was so fascinating to see the change. And I thought, wow, this is something that I think can definitely help in the business world. And I started doing research, and obviously there's a lot of large theaters and organizations that have this business arm. But a girlfriend of mine was starting she had a company called Miss Career Girl, which she has been, since sold, which is cool because she's 34. And she had this whole course about women in entrepreneurs, and she was doing this pilot program and asked me to join. And I said to her, I have no idea for a business. I can join and give you some feedback, but I mean, I really don't know. And she goes, just join, we can make up something as you go. And through that course, I got this idea for Improve It. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I'm so fascinated about. But I also really wanted there to be a charity arm to it. I really wanted it to have some type of altruistic component to it. And so I started doing a lot of research and just sat on this idea in 2011 till 2013 after my husband and I got married, because I was planning a wedding, but I loved this idea. I would tell people about it, and they're like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to, you should do that. But you kind of saying you're going to do this idea versus doing it are two different things. So then in 2013, I was full speed ahead after the wedding. I had all this momentum of like planning a wedding, and I said, I'm going to start this business. So I did some research, started talking to some improvisors, and at the time we had teams of improvisers helping out with the facilitation, and then building a website, getting an LLC, getting a business license, doing all those things. And so we actually launched in June of 2014, and I was this like super optimistic. We had this soft launch party, and a bunch of friends came, and basically it was like our website was launching. So we're opening our doors. Really, we have a website. And so I was so like, oh my gosh, John, that's my husband. We can't go on vacation. The moment we launch this website, the phone's going to ring off the hook, and we're not going to be able to go on vacation anymore. Say goodbye to your social life. I was like, this is it. I'm sorry. We need to do it all now. And I have really, again, this is like, I guess, my naivete or just my over-optimistic self kicked in. But it was literally crickets. I mean, there was not a single, like, no one cared, right? Like, it was like nothing for months, like 5 months. So there was this competition with the Red Eye, which is a sub newspaper of the Chicago Tribune, and they were doing this competition called the Big Idea Awards, and it was for entrepreneurs who had ideas to, share their ideas, and then the public votes on it, and then it goes into this like big Shark Tank round where the public comes and votes, and you present your ideas, and so we ended up winning that in 2014, and that was a very big deal because a lot of people at that time did not know that I was building Improve It on top of my full-time job, and because it was such a thing that you had to ask people for votes and you had to promote it, my entire team at work found out about it, so my cover was blown. All my clients found out about it, but the coolest thing was they all came and supported it, and we won because of the support that I had from all of those people, and because it was literally you had to get the most votes at this big event with 500 people, so just so many people came and showed up, and actually that night I had a sketch show after we won, so it was from 6 to 8 was the competition, and then this huge crew of my friends and coworkers and family all went from the competition to my show, which was in Wrigleyville. We went from West Loop to Wrigleyville, so at 10:30 show. So that was it was such a crazy night. But that really launched us and got us a lot of visibility, and then also just a lot of people supporting us. And through that, I was like, okay, this was a sign. I have to keep going. So things changed, and now it's grown.
I think you just recited the plot to High School Musical, Erin, where you...
Get your head in the game. You gotta get your head in the game.
Troy and I can't remember Troy's girlfriend now. How they pulled it off.
Sharpay.
Well, Sharpay was the rival. Sharpay was.
Right.
Oh shoot.
That was Vanessa.
Vanessa. Yes. So they pulled off the basketball game, the science fair, and the talent show, all in one night. So now we know where Disney got it from.
Oh yeah, they wrote it. It was based on.
It was based on your life, yeah. Lightly based.
Lightly, yes, very lightly. That's actually in the credits. Very lightly based on the life of Erin Diehl.
So Erin, you're in Chicago. You're in the heartbeat of improvisation, and you're in the world of the second cities and the IOs, and so specifically with my approach to sort of improv in the corporate world and improv with organizations and teams, I focus on the idea of purpose, authenticity, and collaboration. Mm-hmm. So for you with Improve It, what's the focus? What's the niche that you think defines Improve It?
I love that. And by the way, I'm halfway through your book. I didn't get to finish the whole thing in time for this podcast, but I want you to know I know that, and I love your book, so it's a plug for you, Travis.
Well, thank you. The second half of the book really stinks, so you should probably just stop there.
Well, I was like, oh man, I tried to finish it last night, and I love it. I just was literally like, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to you about it when I finish it. So we'll have to do another podcast
Absolutely.
When I finish it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of what Improve It focuses on is creating a safe space for teams. And right now we focus a lot on teams. So just to give you an overarching view, we have 10 different soft skills that we focus on. So 10 different workshops. Each workshop's 2 hours in length. And those things range from collaboration, effective communication, presentation skills, leadership, networking. The overarching kind of I like to say thesis statement, if you will, with all of these workshops is to, number one, get you in a safe space so that you feel free from judgment and that others can share ideas without judgment. And because of that, that's making us as individuals more empowered in our roles and more productive at work. So that, if you take a networking workshop, or if you take we have an intern 101 workshop, actually. If you take either of those workshops, the content in there will be completely different, but that overarching message will resonate through every single offering that we have. And we're also starting to do some e-learning, so more like email content. So we're putting together these really cool, and that's from Allie, our director of operations. This is all her. I cannot take credit for any of it. I just say her words. But she's putting together something we're calling Improve You. So right now we're focusing on the teams. We work with individuals who are part of a subgroup of people within an organization. Sometimes we work with the entire organization, but we also are really wanting to focus on individuals and helping them be their best selves through personal, professional development. So, these e-courses are coming out. We've actually defined 4 traits of an improviser that we really think help you think like an improviser, but work like a boss, if you will. And those are bravery, support, competence, and creativity. And so through that, we've created some packaged programming with all of our workshops. But on an individual level, we're rolling out some e-courses on those topics individually. So we're starting off with competence will be our first one, and that should come out at the end of November, beginning of December. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer. I wish I had like 3 words that really summed it all up like you, but that's it.
No, I love it. I love all the different the offerings and the variety and the improve it like a boss. I love it. What is the one area or the one aspect, Erin, that most sort of inspires you specifically about the work?
The one area. These are great questions, Travis. I'm really loving them.
Thank you.
Area. I'll be honest with you. I love watching people walk into a workshop one way and be like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Or completely be nervous and not want to be there, and then watch them walk out completely changed, open, vulnerable, and smiling. That's what I love.
I love it. Yeah.
And I love we actually, so regardless of political views, we work with the Obama Foundation. And, I personally am a huge sort of, driver of a lot of their mentality. It's not a political, anti-anything. It's a positive change foundation where they're trying to just help citizens 18 to 24 really help them sort of drive change in their communities and help them find specific ways to do that. And so we worked with them this weekend, and our client experience associate, it's a long title, but she's newer to us. She was actually an intern with us for 8 months and just came into this role. Her name is Jenna. She actually got a chance to pitch her idea for creating change in her community to Obama himself on Saturday. And he gave her, I'm not even just kidding, he gave her feedback and was questioning her, specifically about this project that she put together through this day-long learning program. And for me, Jenna is super wonderful. I know Jenna's true self and how great she is, but she has a fear of speaking in public, and she also she claims to be an introvert. To watch her stand up there and own it and just be so open and knowledgeable and confident on stage in front of 200 people and a former president of the United States was one of the greatest joys I've ever had in working with Improve It ever. I was like a proud mom videotaping her because she's like, okay, Mom. But I was just so in awe and in shock of and she even said, she's like, I know what we talk about it and Improve It. And I know what, at this moment, I had to be I had to stay calm, I had to be open, and I had to be present. And it was beautiful. I mean, and I'm so proud of her. And so that to me is, if I could just put like that as a microcosm of what I love to watch, it's people just being comfortable with who they are, owning it, and then just really driving forward with things that make them scared. I think that even goes back to our beginning conversation. Mm-hmm. Like, she just owned the crap out of that microphone and was just so present and wonderful to watch. And I don't think I've ever been prouder as a business owner or as a mentor or anything. I was just like, it was an incredible experience to watch.
I love it. I saw some of the pictures on Instagram, and it looked like that was very, very cool. So, no, what a wonderful story. And again, to your point of having people come into a workshop and leave transformed, or leave with a completely different sort of attitude or spirit to them. Yeah, so cool, so rewarding. It's. I always feel like when people come in, the question they're thinking to themselves, like, all right, who's this schmo? Like, mm-hmm. Who's this schmo, and what's he going to try to teach me, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously I'm not really trying to teach you or our work. It's not about us doing anything as much as, offering up, some perspectives and ideas. But yeah, that to see those light bulbs go off, and to see people go, just to leave the room different than the way they came in. Yeah. No, I love that. Very cool. Yeah. All right. Last question, Erin.
Ready.
Last question, and I'm just thinking of this on the spot from a sort of the spirit of what Live Yes And is all about. And as you know, right, the biggest leaps in growth and progress in our lives typically come from the things that we wouldn't have chosen to ask for on our own. Mm-hmm. It's taking what life gives you and turning it into a big yes and. So when you look mm-hmm. at sort of your life, what was the biggest curveball sort of life threw you that you had to say yes and to, and how did it propel you in a positive direction?
Travis, I mean, these questions are blowing my mind, and that is a wonderfully stated question. First of all, I want to give you that.
Thank
I want to
you.
yes and that. And it's a real humdinger of a thinker for me here. So let me. Just improvising here.
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind.
I really think it's just every situation that I think I'm going to go back to the moving. I'm going to go back to really moving a lot as a child. And maybe that's not even that much, but I think it is, truthfully. Like, a lot of people live in the same hometown, or they were born somewhere and then they moved somewhere and grew up in that one place. And for me, it was really just being super adaptable. I mean, I moved in third grade. I didn't know a single person, not that big of a deal in third grade. Going into ninth grade, I mean, that's pretty hard. Then going from ninth grade, and also I was super Southern, going to a school in the suburb of Detroit.
Yes.
So
you were the fish out of the water. Yes, you were. Yes. As the Flint boy that I am. Yes.
I mean, sticks of Georgia to West Bloomfield, Michigan. Okay. So woo. And then from there I went to Clemson, and I didn't know anybody either. So I think just being adaptable and knowing that, I think I'm not a super religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person. And I have to say, I always think that when life throws you these curveballs, there's always a reason that door is opening, and you just have to walk through it in order to see what good can come from it. So I think that's the yes and for me, is just knowing if I can, with all those times I've moved, and even I moved to Chicago, I knew one person, I knew my best friend.
Right.
And so I think just knowing that I will be okay, I can start over, and that there's just friends here I haven't met yet. I mean, that was really the yes. All of those times helped me really, I think, just become who I am, and I think just made me stronger. And I think there's been so many little things that I've also felt like I've had to yes and as well. I think even with that said, I think all of those, like, you know, and I had a choice in a couple of those moves, but the other times I didn't have a choice. They were for my family. And I think that through that, it made taking a leap of faith and starting a business, leaving a full-time job, like I've just been able to take more leaps of faith like that and know that it will be okay versus being, you know, in the same space, in the same box, you know, sort of metaphorical box, if you will, my whole life. So it's a great question. I'm gonna have to think about that a little deeper.
That's all right. Well, that's a great answer. No, I think you definitely hit on some big aspects of your life and probably how influential those were for you. So no, those are great. All right, Erin, last thing is how can people find you online and on social media?
You're wonderful, Travis. So, I just want to give up. This is how Travis and I even met, is through social media.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. So www.improveitchicago.com is our website. And you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn Twitter and Instagram at Improve It Shy. Facebook is just Improve It. So check us out. We do a lot of posting about this wonderful world of yes and I'm so thrilled and honored that you asked me to do this, Travis. I think the world of you, and I think this is such a cool business, and anybody who lives this lifestyle, I think, are the bee's knees. So kudos to you.
Well, Erin, it's awesome having a kindred spirit out there that's doing really, really fantastic work, and it shows up in all of your media. I think the thing that stood out to me when I found you all for the first time online was the joy that came through the posts and the pictures of the groups that you were working with, and you could just see it from picture to picture. So it's really cool. Really pumped about everything that you're doing. And I know this will not be the last time that we speak. And to everyone listening, I will also post those links in the post for this podcast as well. So, Erin, thank you so much. And thanks for taking time for the Weekly Yap.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much. And I think you're wonderful. Keep it up, Travis. You're the best. Appreciate it.
So life is a painting. All your colors always bleed together.